strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it is in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Beth Williams is an investment advisor representative of, and advisory services are offered through USA Financial Securities Corp., a registered investment advisor. Megan Carney, Megan S. Carney PLLC, and Financial Arc Builders are not affiliated with USA Financial Securities Corp.
Welcome to Money Healing. I'm your co-host, Beth Williams.
And I'm your other co-host, Megan Carney. We're here to talk about money and our feelings related to it. I'm a psychologist who specializes in helping sensitive people.
And I'm a financial planner. We both talk to everyday people just like you about these topics.
Everyone's mental health and money health journeys are so different. And as unique as we all are, there are some common themes when it comes to how our emotions impact our money and vice versa.
And it's those common themes that we are going to be discussing together, both the themes themselves and some ideas from us about how to move forward and heal your relationship with money. In the next bit of episodes, Megan and I will be unpacking the various emotions and trauma themes that we've encountered within our observations over the last few years.
We discovered that people fell into one of two camps, one that knows their numbers and where they are financially, and those that don't know their numbers and where they are financially. We recommend that you go through the episodes and listen to the ones you believe may apply to you.
Megan and I are big advocates for getting collaborative support for both your mental health and your financial health journey. As you listen, we recommend that you pay attention to yourself, your reactions emotionally, and reach out to either a mental health professional and or a financial professional to help you deal with your relationship with money.
We'll begin by discussing I don't know my numbers and blank. Is there something that comes after that? Emotional themes we'll discuss within that will be fear, avoidance, what happens if I lose or fail, shame, guilt, and even domestic violence and abuse with the overarching theme of trauma.
We will then discuss I know my numbers and blank. Some of the emotional themes that we'll discuss within that will be hopelessness, fear, shame, embarrassment, burnout, never enough, feeling lost, undervalued, worry, and then we'll also deal with the overarching theme of trauma. Welcome back to Money Healing. Right, to segue off of our last episode, we're going to be talking today about I know my numbers, I don't get financial help because I don't really trust financial professionals.
I love how you say that with this, like, I shouldn't be saying this, but I don't really trust them.
Which I think is probably reasonable, and we'll unpack that here in a bit. We were going to reference, by the way, if you're a little unsure about what a financial advisor is or what that means or what we do or how we get paid, I would go back to episode number 4, which is trust and transparency with our industry, and you will hopefully get some of your questions answered there. But Megan was going to ask me specific questions that she felt like maybe come up when we're talking about not trusting an advisor.
Well, there are a few things that I think really do come up when we're not trusting somebody, because we're saying I don't trust because of whatever reason it is. And some of us really like to be in control. That's even more common if you've often felt like you didn't have control or at some point lost control. And so I wonder if you often hear like, I don't know if I trust that, like, you're going to do as good of a job as I would do on this.
I think that it's reasonable to ask those questions. And let me just say from here on out, I'm not insecure about not trusting financial advisors. Like, let's just open the doors and let the fresh air in. And if that's the case, I think that that's pretty common, honestly. You hear a lot about these really terrible people doing terrible things with your money. And so I don't know that that's an unreasonable fear. We often have a joke that it's only 98% of financial advisors that make us look bad.
Oh, wow.
It's like it's just hard. And that's why I would say I would go back to trust and transparency with episode 4. But I completely understand the perspective that, like, hey, maybe my idea of how to handle the situation financially is not going to match with the financial advisor. And that's why I would say don't go with just the first person that you talk to either. I would ask around, I would ask different people, because all advisors are different. We have different ideas, we have different solutions, we have different ways to talk about things, we have different backgrounds in our own lives. And so I would ask around, and I would just get some different perspectives. But I mean, I would say if you're, for instance, dealing with a tax situation, which again, aforementioned, at the time of this recording, the tax deadline just passed. If tax evasion is your strategy, I will disagree with you. That's an extreme example, but it would be one where, like, I mean, yeah, if we're not seeing eye to eye, by all means, we should probably just, move our separate ways. But if you think that it's going to be a constant fight between you and the advisor on what to do, and maybe you're constantly having this where you're coming in and it's a constant battle, well, then maybe that's not the right fit. And maybe you're not seeing eye to eye. Again, we are very different, and there are lots of different thought processes around things. And I would just ask around. But personally, I think some of this comes down to, like you said, control, which is totally reasonable. And my strategy, my philosophy is always like, you are in control. It's your money. You get to do whatever you want. My job is not to tell you, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. My job is to show you what happens if you do that. That's what I personally think my job is. I know other advisors that don't think that way. And again, that's totally fine too. But I would, for instance, really like to learn how to fly a plane. I've always wanted to learn how to fly, and it's just been a matter of time, obviously, to learn a new skill. And yet I'm not going to hold myself back from getting on a plane just because I haven't learned how to fly a plane. I still have places that I need to go. I still have people that I need to see. And so I'm going to board the plane, even though I don't exactly understand what is going on. And I'm just going to, trust that the pilot knows what he's doing. But again, if you're thinking that it's going to be a battle, I can't control that. I can't fix you. I can only help people that want help. And like we've mentioned before, maybe it's just not the right time. And maybe you're a person that just really wants to spend time to figure that out. And personally, I'm not that way. Personally, when I go to any professional, I just kind of hand them all of my stuff. And I'm like, you're the professional, you tell me what to do. Obviously, I'm using logic and I'm using my own decision-making tools as well, but I'm not just, throwing it to somebody and saying, okay, bye, and I'll never have a conversation with you again. So it just kind of depends on trying to find the right fit, I think. And it sounds redundant and it sounds really simple, but it's not. And so just ask questions and see. Maybe you have a better idea. I don't know. I'm open to it, but ultimately, I do think it's up to you. And if you're not feeling like that's going to be the right thing, then don't force it.
You were talking about flying a plane and like how you would still get on a plane because you still need to go places. And right now you don't know how to fly a plane, but what if you actually knew how to fly the plane, Beth? Would you still get on the plane with somebody else flying?
Yes, because of my own philosophy on time. I only have so much time. And again, there's some people that really want to dive into that stuff and they want to figure out do-it-yourselfers. I have family members that are that way, and that's fine. But it's ultimately, I do think it's a matter of just time, of trying to dedicate all of that all of that stuff and updating your ideas and your concepts. And if you just want to do that yourself, that's fine. But for me, yeah, I would definitely still get on a plane because I don't have the time to try to find one to rent to, fly down or whatever. And I didn't renew my license, or I don't know. But yes, I would definitely do that because it just comes down to time and how I want to manage that.
Yeah, so if part of the need to control things, if you can let some of that go, it can buy you some more time for yourself to do those things that are aligned with your values, right? That's what your money's for anyways, right? To live life according to your values. And I'm thinking about the car analogy you used in our last episodes. If you didn't listen to that, go back, take a listen. But you were talking about how ultimately it's the client who's driving the car. And in my mind, the financial advisor is the one holding the map, the one who can tell you, well, if you turn right here, this is where we're going to end up. If you keep going straight, this is where we're going to end up. If you turn left, this is where you're likely to end up. And the driver still gets to decide which way they're turning and when they're turning. And the advisor is, again, the one with the information, with just the data, who can take the emotion out of it and let you know this is where you're likely to land. So ultimately, you actually don't have to give up any control.
Again, going back to the time thing, building a rocket ship is probably not complicated to a rocket ship designer, but that's pretty complicated for me. And again, I only have so many hours in the day. So, I mean, I love to learn and I love to dive into things, but ultimately I'm just like, you know what? I don't have the time to be an expert in every single profession and keep up with, especially with finance and tax law changing and estate laws change. And there's lots of different regulations that change every year. And so it's a lot to try to keep up on.
And that really segues into the next part of like why we might not get somebody to help us with our numbers when we know our numbers. And there's this concern that I hear come up a lot. Like it was a concern we had before we found you, of like really wanting somebody whose strategy matches our values, or who's able to incorporate our values into the strategy that they use without it being this like constant tension.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a fight. I mean, that's again my own philosophy, and the clients that I have feel very similar to that, where they want to see that their values are aligning with where their money's at. But I also have other clients that don't want to get into that stuff. They don't want to try to figure out, why am I driving a car in the first place, to use this analogy that we used in the last episode. But that's my philosophy, and so I'm not going to be a fit for everybody. Some people just don't want to dive that deep, and that's okay. I can only help those that want help.
And I'm like, there is nobody else I would want. I want somebody who can consider the emotions and go deep and dig into values.
Megan, I kind of wonder, where does that hesitation to trust, I think, really maybe come from?
Well, when we're not trusting, there's inherently a level of fear, right? Because if we're not trusting, we're not feeling safe in some way. And if we're not going to get help because we're not trusting, then we are avoiding that fear. And we're avoiding whatever the thing is that we're afraid of is going to happen because we're not trusting, right? And in my experience, when we are not trusting, it's because we've been hurt before. And whether you label that trauma or not, doesn't matter to me. You are still going to have a trauma type of reaction when we are hurt, when something threatens our physical, mental, financial safety. So if perhaps we've been taken advantage of before financially. Like, yeah, there is going to be a lack of trust with a financial advisor, and you're going to need somebody, I would argue, like Beth, who can take the time to build that trust with you, who can hand over the reins and let you drive the car. Like, what I would argue, Beth, is that you're unknowingly a very trauma-informed financial advisor, because you give the data, you go slow, you're really transparent, you give people choice, you're not very pushy. And those are the things that we want to see from somebody who's trauma-informed. Lots of transparency, lots of ability for the client to be in control.
And maybe some of that comes down to just asking. I mean, I'm not sure, but at least for me, if I was having a trauma response, and we've already talked about this in some episodes on my own traumas, and some of Megan's traumas too, for me, a lot of what can be solved by that is an open conversation and an open dialogue and just asking questions. And at least for us, for our practice, if you don't know where to begin, call Megan, call me. We've got all of our contact information here, you know, and just ask, you know, because yeah, for me, I'm not threatened by that conversation at all. And if you're getting a pushback by maybe it's not an advisor, maybe it's an accountant, and you're just supposed to trust me, that's never going to be my response. And I would say for the bulk of us, that's probably not going to be the response. But if that's what you're getting and you're not feeling comfortable, then you just need to not have that as your advisor. Just find somebody that you feel really comfortable with. You can challenge, you can ask, you can dig into the questions, and by all means, I think that that's welcomed. If I go to my doctor and my doctor's recommending a new medication, I'm probably going to do some research on the medication, you know, but ultimately I know that she's got my best interest in mind. So I'm going to trust that that's the case. But it's taken years for me to, you know, believe that whatever she's going to recommend is going to be the right thing.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, that's a red flag if somebody is saying, well, you just have to trust me, and they've given you no reason to trust them yet. And especially if they've given you a reason not to trust them. Hopefully you're not going to any professional that you feel that way about. But blind trust, that's always a bit of an orange flag, at least for me, of like, well, just trust me because you're supposed to. And, you know, overall, what this is coming down to is, if you're not going to a financial advisor because you do not trust financial people, to me, the answer is you find somebody who lets you ask questions. And the same with any professional. You would see the healthcare provider that you get to ask questions to if you've had multiple healthcare providers turn you down or, you know, disregard your concerns in the past that turned out to be really valid concerns. Or, you know, going to a therapist who is saying like, nope, this is the way, this is the only way. And you expressing some concerns and getting some pushback from that rather than explanation. Maybe that's not the therapist for you, because you need somebody who can really develop the trust with you first. Beth, one other question that I had for you is, in my industry, I know it's important for us to essentially have like a niche, right? We work with people with a certain type of concern, or we use a certain type of approach to therapy. So like, I work with people who are really sensitive and stressed out and might have some trauma in their background and are probably neurodivergent in some way, which is a big group, but it is still a clear group of people who I'm like, yeah, those are my people. You want to go deep, you're sensitive, I got you. And I think sometimes we want that in a financial advisor, like somebody who's like, oh, yep, clearly they're going to get me in my situation. And it's not clear from the outside if financial advisors work in that way. Like, do you have a different type of client that like you're the best fit for their specific situation? Is that even a thing?
I would like it to be more of a thing, because along your thought process, I think all of us advisors would be better off by trying to define that. But it might not be public, but yes, most of us have something that we are really good with. Mine are people going through a change. By and large, most of my clients are going through a change, which is probably why I take more of a therapy approach to things, because when there's a change that hits you, I really believe you're trying to get to a point where you understand your values and how those relate to whatever happened. Maybe it's a change that was inside or outside of your control. If it was something that was outside of your control, well, now we're trying to build what our values look like on the other side of whatever happened. And that could be that somebody passed away. It could be that you moved. It could be that you changed jobs or careers. So usually that's when my clients come to me, that's something's happened and something's changing. Most of my clients are needing to go slow, and they're needing to reassess where their values sit in line with whatever that change is.
So if you're somebody who is hesitant to get financial help because you don't think the person is going to understand your specific situation, what you're facing, or like what your current money circumstances are, and that information isn't necessarily public, how do you figure that out? How do you find the right person?
I would sit again with yourself and with your emotions about how you feel about money and what you're thinking about money. And I would start to unpack, even if you can get to a point where you can say, they're not going to understand my specific situation. Well, then I'm going to ask you, what's the specific situation? It might be that you're not as different as you feel like you are because you're wrapped up in whatever emotions are going on, be that, you messed up and so you feel guilty about it, or you feel like you should have done it sooner, or whatever emotions are coming up. I would start to unpack what is the specific situation. If you have a special needs person that you're trying to take care of, well, then that would be somebody that you'd specifically be asking for financial consulting on. And we do a great deal of those too, because that's a big change. But I would start asking other professionals where maybe you're working with an attorney or you're working with an accountant and they're aware of your specific situation. Maybe you're a business owner and you want to find somebody that's really good in that area. And then start to unpack, again, what are those emotions that are coming up? What's that specific situation? And then go to the advisor and say, this is why I'm hesitant, or this is what my specific situation is. And I think we can all be better with more honesty and with more open transparency about whatever's going on. And most of us will be completely frank. If you have a situation that is very niche and is very odd, we can bring in other advisors, or we can bring in somebody else that has a different perspective. And I have a very large network of people that I try to keep up on, because there are things that come to me. Some change occurred with a client and it's a new one for me too. And so we want to bring that person in and get their professional perspective, and then I can figure out how best to advise them.
So it really comes down to, again, sitting with our feelings and figuring out, like, well, what is it about this specific situation, and then being able to bring that to a financial advisor and saying, like, this is the situation. Have you done this before? Have you helped people with this type of thing before? To maybe get some comfort that they've had experience with it.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Money Healing. In this next episode, we're going to be talking about I don't go to a financial advisor or I don't get financial help because I don't have enough money to warrant getting help. And we're going to talk about what enough is. We'll see you there.